Hey peeps, Sarah here from Sparrow Springs, and we are back again today with another digital painting in Photoshop. Sometimes after doing a lot of drawing and painting, digital art is a really nice break for me. So today I'm working on a baby squirrel with his strawberry, and there's a story to this one. But first, today is day 11 of my Tubetober challenge where I'm posting one video a day for the month of October. I almost didn't make it yesterday. Yesterday's video got out really late, but I got it. And there's even more fun stuff to come, so if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications to see all those new videos. And now for our little squirrel. So once again, I had a rough pencil sketch that I had roughed out when I had a chance, and this was inspired by a little squirrel that we raised a couple years ago. His name was Finnick. So Finnick came to us rather unexpectedly, as most baby critters would, I guess. I remember it pretty clearly too. We were about to leave the house and go help someone move, and suddenly my husband stopped and he was like, there's a squirrel. In my head I'm kind of like, okay. There's squirrels all over the place, and so I was like, okay, we'll just shoo it away, we gotta go. Then he said, no, you don't understand. It's like a baby squirrel sitting on my shoe. Of course, in my head, I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, this doesn't happen. And to be honest, I didn't believe him, so I couldn't see because I was on the other side of the car, and I was getting a bit impatient because we were already late. Then David was like, oh, it just scurried under the car. So I, roll my eyes, I look under the car just to shoo it away. And then he ran up to me and started climbing up my pant leg. And I was absolutely shocked. This never happens. And it's never happened to me before anyways. So I said, okay, there's a squirrel crawling up my leg. My poor husband. He was like, yeah, I was trying to tell you. So I did what everybody says you shouldn't do. I picked him up. And he nestled in my hand and would not move. I tried to put him in the grass and he kept running at me. After this point, we weren't entirely sure what to do, so I asked my husband if he thought I should try and take care of him for the meantime. He said yes, so at least I couldn't be blamed for always being the one to bring an animal home. So my husband went to help our friends move, and then I started taking care of the little squirrel. I gave him some droplets of water off the tip of my finger just to make sure he was hydrated, and he ended up nestling up in my hand and fell asleep. So I took the opportunity to grab a few pictures, and then I started doing some research on just what to do next. So he has the telltale signs of an orphan squirrel. So apparently, I didn't know this, but they'll approach people after a few days on their own when they get desperate. And he was also covered with fleas, which a mother squirrel would generally take care of. So, unfortunately, just like with our sparrow, there was no nearby wildlife rehabs, and squirrels are in abundance, so no interest from any sort of official organizations. Once again, just like with our sparrow, Finnick was on his own. I found care instructions from others who had successfully raised red squirrels, and I sent my husband a list of things we needed. The squirrel was actually way easier than the sparrow just because their diet is more closely resembling a rat's. So I gave him a bath just to get rid of the fleas and started a regular feeding schedule. Based on pictures, we estimated him to be about 3 weeks old, and optimal release time was 9 weeks. So I had to commit to 6 weeks. And oh my gosh, was he a cute little thing. He looked forward to his feedings, obviously, and he loved to sleep in the crook of my arm. My husband and I took turns kind of taking care of him, and eventually, when he got a bit more mobile, we converted my old flight cage into a squirrel cage. So we got some branches and different things all arranged in his cage so he could practice climbing around. I also made a point to get him outside as much as possible so he could stay familiar with the outdoors. Early on, he stuck pretty close to me. I would try to put him on the ground, but he would scurry up my pant leg and nestle under my ponytail. I actually did have to untangle him from my hair a couple times. Eventually, he started showing some of the typical squirrel traits, so he would actually climb around me like squirrels would circle a tree trunk to confuse their predators. It's absolutely crazy that instincts just kick in like that. So bit by bit, we added fruits and veggies into his diet and brought things in from the yard for him to play with. Now this is where the strawberry comes in. By far, his favorite items were cherry tomatoes, apples, and strawberries. But the funny thing is that he would just kind of stash them. So this tiny squirrel is carrying a strawberry the size of his head around his cage, and he would try to wedge it between the branches of his cage. Sometimes successfully, other times it would take a few times for him to get it situated just right, and it would just be balancing there. Now the nice thing about red squirrels is they're a lot more independent, so it's easier to successfully release them than it is with a gray squirrel. I guess with gray squirrels, sometimes they can get almost too attached to their caretaker, but luckily red squirrel, so a little bit easier without his litter mates. And we actually did find a couple of his litter mates that had, I don't know if some animal had got to them, but they were off behind a garage, so it was, well, I assume they were his litter mates anyways, because they were about the same age. Now, as Finnick got older, he got to be a bit more skittish around us, so this actually just worked in our favor, so we just kind of more and more let him to himself and stopped being so involved with his handling. And it was becoming more and more clear that he was ready to leave the nest, so to speak. So we built him a squirrel box that he would eventually transfer outside so that he had something familiar when we finally put him out in the yard. So this picture was taken just a couple days before we released him. Quite a difference from when we first found him. So we put his cage in the entryway so that he could acclimate to the temperature changes and stuff. Now the day before we finally let him go, he was actually running laps around his cage. He was so ready to go, and we got this little video clip of his release as well. Definitely a learning experience, but well worth it. I'm sure my neighbors aren't too happy with me because now I'm the crazy person who started feeding all the neighborhood squirrels just so Finnick was equipped for his first winter. I can't say for positive that I ever saw him again because there's so many red squirrels around here and he looked like any other one. Of course, squirrels tend to be territorial as well, and they change spots as well, so I doubt that he even comes into our yard at all anymore, but I still feed the squirrels. So as I finish up this drawing, this is what I picture Finnick doing with all the strawberries that we left for him by his nesting box. I had a lot of fun with this drawing, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Again, stay tuned for more videos this month. I will be venturing into some stuff that I've never done on my channel before. And that's it for now. I will see you in the next video.